Hey guys, we are going to do some list reviews today. I had brought this up as something I wanted to do in my LTTs video from last week. We've had some submissions by some people, which I really appreciate. Thanks for letting me take a look at your lists here. So I want to go ahead and review these. We've got 4 today. Hoping to maybe do these every month or so, or maybe once a quarter, depending on what the interest looks like, how many submissions I get. But I'll keep doing them as long as you guys keep sending them to me. Now, a few disclaimers before I hop in here. Number one, ultimately all of this is purely my opinion. It's purely subjective. Don't take everything I say as like the be-all, end-all of what you're supposed to do here. I'm going to approach these from a relatively competitive perspective, like you're going to take this to a tournament, try to optimize things, take the best list you can. If these, for those of you who have submitted, if these are just kitchen table lists or stuff you're playing at your friendly local game store, take my advice with a grain of salt. Like I said, I'm just going to approach it from a relatively high competitive level, and so when I see things in these lists that I don't think are super optimal, I'll call them out. But if it's just a casual list, who cares? Fly what you want to fly, build the list you want to build. But I'm going to assume that these are meant to be relatively competitive tournament lists. So with that out of the way, we'll get into the first one here. This is one of our submissions on YouTube here. I don't know exactly how to say that name. It's K0SK4, I believe. I don't know how you want to pronounce that. But they have submitted a Yularen list. Now, I want to take a look and see. With their submission, they said, wasn't really sure about the objectives, but I imagine this fleet swinging into my opponent's side, exhausting tokens, and dealing chunks of damage. So, with that, let's take a look at what they've got here. So it is a Yularen list. I think Yularen is arguably one of the top 2, maybe top 3 Republic commanders. I'm definitely higher on him now than I used to be. I think he's very good. So it's a great start there. This is on Acclimator 1 with Yularen, Ahsoka, Flight Controllers, Flag Bridge, Reserve Hangar Decks, Navuta B, and all fighters follow me. Got a Pelta Medical with Flight Commander, Fighter Coordination Teams, Bomber Command, and Expanded Hangars. A Vic 1 with Fighter Coordination, Veteran Gunners, and Svats, I don't know how people want to say that. And then Squad Ball, we got 8 squads. It's Anakin in the Delta 7, Axe, then 3 V-19s, and 3 ARCs. Objectives running Precision Strike, Planetary Ion Cannon, and Volatile Deposits. So a couple things to look at here. Number one, it's hard to go wrong with Yularen, Navuta B with Ahsoka. That's, you can make for a pretty decent fighter wing just with that and a few generics or a couple of aces. So it's a good start. A couple things stand out to me. Firstly, you don't have any way to get squad tokens on your ships without taking them yourself. There's no CommsNet, there's no Hondo. So part of what makes Yularen so strong is being able to resolve an extra squadron activation when you do a squad command, a squad token. It takes the Acclimator from 3 to 5. It would take, again, this Pelta here with Expanded Hangars from 3 to 5. So getting that token is a big deal. Without having Hondo or CommsNet, you kind of limit yourself in what your command stack has to be, or you don't get to use Yularen to its full effect. It probably means you're taking a squad token turn 1 on your ships, which is not the end of the world, but that kind of gives away what you're going to be doing. If you're not taking a squad command turn 1, you may be kind of behind on your command stack, if that makes sense. Like you're taking the squad token turn 2 or turn 3 when you want to be pushing squads, or you want to be navving or something like that. So you could kind of run into a bit of a hang-up there. That being said, it's not an absolute necessity, particularly because you only are running the 8 squads instead of, I've seen 10 or 12 with Yularen. But it's something to consider. The other thing that I thought of while looking at this list is you have, all of your ships are very fragile. You have, I mean, acclimators fold like paper. They're just basically just glorified quasars. The Vic 1 also folds like paper. So you don't have really any defensive tech. But you said in your comment here that you imagined yourself kind of swinging through your opponent's side and trying to get that way. You've got a ship that can't really move very well. You can't turn, and so that might be easier said than done, which makes me think you'd be taking navigate commands here. If you're going to be trying to flank, which I already don't think is a super great idea with this list. To me, this list screams, I'm going to play slow, I'm going to keep my stuff in a line, I'm going to reach out and touch you with Svats where I can, but I'm just going to kind of play slow and sit tight. And for that reason, I don't think you need the all fighters follow me that badly. I would be tempted, personally, to drop flag bridge and all fighters follow me and grab either boosted comms or expanded hangars. Probably boosted comms on the acclimator so that you don't have to put yourself in danger. Because like I said, 1 accuracy against an acclimator is absolutely brutal, and you have no way to mitigate that. I would also maybe consider getting rid of fighter coordination teams, although I do like the fighter coordination team into flight commander. That's kind of neat. You've got 2 copies of them here, though. So I see why they're here. They're here for the arcs, because the arcs are slow. The arcs are speed 2. It's going to take them a while to get into the fight, but I don't think that your list should be moving very fast in most games. I think trying to flank, you just don't turn well enough, and 2 of your ships can't go above speed 2. And so your opponent's going to see the flank coming from a mile away. They're going to be able to do something about it. And if the acclimator dives in at speed 3, it has no defensive tech to keep it alive, so it might just get popped. You're also going to have to be navigating to get any kind of decent turning. Therefore, you're not going to be doing squad commands, and that's kind of what your list wants to do. So to me, this just seems like you want to slow roll, kind of at your opponent, let your squads do some fighting, and for that reason, it doesn't matter that the arcs are speed 2, because they should be able to get into position just fine. So I would drop the all fighters follow me in the flag bridge, put boosted comms on the acclimator, and then I would probably drop at least 1. I'd probably drop it from the victory. I'd probably drop fighter coordination from the victory, and I believe that would actually give you the points for engine techs if you felt so inclined, or some other upgrade. You'd have a few more points to work with there. Lastly, looking at your objectives here, precision strike, it makes some sense, although you only have 3 bombers. So, as far as red objectives go, I think it's fine. It's probably the right play. You could maybe have a discussion about, you don't want most wanted or advanced gunnery or anything, but I think Ion Storm potentially has a place here. You could also go for something like surprise attack, which puts your opponent a bit closer to you than you'd like, but that just means the arcs can get to the fight sooner, and this should help you win the squad war if you're up against another list running heavy squads, because you get those raids. But precision strike is fine. Ion cannon is meh. It's a very meh objective. Not a lot of great yellows for this list. I would maybe consider fleet and being, if you haven't already. Just that may give your ships a little bit more survivability, and hey, you may get 15 or 30 points from that objective. Trying to think if there's any other ones. I don't think I would take tactics. That's very much a playstyle call. It would help with your bad nav charts, that's for sure. Maybe help your ships get a little more survivability and gives you those exos to play with. But Ion Cannon is okay. And the Volatile Deposits, I would swap this to Infested Fields. Any list where you've got a decent number of squads, Infested Fields is just such a stupid good objective. It's my favorite objective in the game. It gives you so much battlefield control, and it helps you win the squad war, and at the very worst, you should be winning the objective points 45 to 30. So it's like a free at least 15 points, if not more, every single game you play it. So I think this needs to be Infested Fields, personally. But that's my feedback for this list. Thank you for your submission. Let's jump on to the next one. This is also a YouTube submitted list. This is from Florian Hess 8064. He's got Ramadi on a Raider 2 with Iden, Decaps and Corvus. Got 2 Architans, both with Intel Officer and QBTs, and then one of them has Centaur. And then 2 Gazantes built the same. You've got Comsnet and RHDs on both. And then quite the squad ball again. We've got Sienna, Valen, Jendon, Merrick, Black Squadron, Tempest, and 2 TIE Interceptors with the objectives of Ion Storm, Asteroid Tactics, and Infested Fields. So this is kind of like a Ramadi MSU with a big squad ball. Now, Florian Hess has said, after a handful of games, I am now trying to figure out if Ozzel could be better as an MSU commander in this case. He also said the bid is to go second here. So let's keep that in mind looking at these objectives. Bid is to go second to play these. We'll get to that at the end. Right off the bat, something that stuck out to me right away on this list is it's kind of trying to do 2 things, one of which it's not great at. You have 3 pieces of a very solid Ramadi MSU list of ships that, if they can get the Ramadi obstruction, are going to punch above their weight class. Particularly those Architans with Intel Officer can be very, very annoying. That being said, there's no reroll tech on the Architans, which it's going to be very feast or famine on how you end up rolling, because you've got no way to fix it, besides, I guess, the occasional Confire token. Now, based on your comment, I know that you've played this list a handful of times, and so if what I'm saying does not match the experience you've had with the list, then you take it with a grain of salt. But you've got a ship here, a 79-point raider. Like, Ramadi with Corvus makes a lot of sense. Decaps, kind of, but I would want to see a blue crit on here, because as it stands, your 3 blue at long from this raider is almost nothing. That's peanuts. That's a maximum of 3 damage. More statistically, probably 2 damage and an accuracy a lot of the time. 3 damage at best. That's almost nothing. Iden is also an interesting inclusion, because the Raider 2, in my mind, and you may not fly it this way, but if you got your commander on it with Corvus and Decaps, it says to me that you want to play this pretty safe, and you want to play it at long range. And there is no reason to take Iden if you're going to be doing that. Iden is what's going to keep you alive at close. So if you play super aggro with this Raider and get use out of Iden's ability, then that's great. But why is Ramadi on it then? Why is it 79 points? Why are you putting your commander on a ship you're going to play super aggressive with that is super squishy like the Raider? So that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I like these Architans builds a lot. I would just probably want some reroll text somewhere. These are fine here. But then the other part, I would actually maybe want to see. Maybe Hondo, not super important, but sometimes you want a nav on one of these if you or a Confire, depending on which one you didn't do with your dial, just because you may want to slow them down because they don't nav super well at high speeds, or you may want the Confire token because you have no rerolls. So it could be clutch, and you've got the points for it. 15 points is one of the bigger, probably the biggest bid I've seen recently, or one of the bigger bids. So you could probably afford to lose 2 points. But this is my main issue with the list. You have 8 squadrons, none of which are rogue. At best, your Gazantes are activating 3 at a time. You can do some cool stuff with Centaur where you can activate them way out of range of the Gazantes. But at best, you're activating 3 squads at a time, which makes you very susceptible to getting alpha'd or counter-alpha'd. Your alpha strike with this list, at best, is Merrick double tap with Jendon, and then Sienna or Valen, depending on what they have. That's not a super strong alpha. You're maybe killing an ace and a generic, or 2 generics, maybe 3 generics at best. And then you're just going to get slapped in the face right back at you. You've got 2 escorts here, which would keep your aces alive a little longer. And you've got some counter in the list. But ultimately, I personally don't love lists that run non-rogue squadrons without a great way to activate them. You can sometimes get away with it, but you've got a lot of squishy squadrons here, and so your opponent could, I'm thinking of like a Yularen matchup. You activate 3 squads, send them in, your opponent activates 8 and sends them back at you. Or you protect your ships with your squads, and your opponent sends 8 and wipes out your entire squad ball. I'm also thinking of like the Biggs Gallant Haven kind of build, where you're doing 1 to 2 damage with each squadron activation. If you're activating 3 at a time, your opponent has plenty of time to punch back at you. So I would either love to see some other way to activate squads. Maybe go super aggressive, put expanded hangars on one of these Gazantes, at least get you a 4th squadron activation in one go. Or change some of or all of these to rogues. It just seems like there's going to be a lot of dead time. Like your squadrons are not going to have a ton of uptime. And by uptime, I mean turns where they're moving and shooting or just generally being impactful. This is too big of a ball to just be a fighter screen, and it's also, not amazing anti-ship. So Tempest is fine. Anti-ship Merrick is obviously fantastic. Your scatter aces or whatever, but everything else doesn't really want to spend a ton of time attacking ships, especially if they have double flak. And in the squadron matchup, you're at 115. This is going to lose to 134 almost every time, particularly on the counter alpha. So I would look at maybe changing this up. However, if this is how you like it and you just wanted some advice on your commander, you were asking about Ozzel, that's a great question. I am very high on Ozzel right now. I think he's fantastic. But in saying that, your list here kind of needs the firepower help from Ramadi. Ozzel, I think, is very good with Architans, and it's kind of a net neutral, because with Ramadi, the Architans can nav command because they can get the extra die from Ramadi, and with Ozzel, they can con fire because they can speed up or slow down with Ozzel himself. So that's a personal preference thing. The Vader, I don't think, benefits any more or any less from either one of them. So I would probably stick with Ramadi just because you kind of need that extra oomph. Like I said, your Architans are going to be very feast or famine with having no rerolls, and so the more dice they can put out there is probably the best. But Ozzel is also very good, so if you have played games and you have found yourself lacking speed control or the ability to kind of fake out your opponent going from like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 with the Raider, then I would give him a try. With anything in Armada, it's just best to put it on the table and see how it plays. Lastly, I said we were going to talk about these down here. So you have a bid for second, which I think is pretty good with your list. I think your list probably doesn't mind going first or second. You can create kind of a nice, toilet bowl for your opponent to run into with those Architan side arcs. In terms of objectives, you know how I feel about Infested Fields. That's fantastic. I don't see a great reason why the red would not be most wanted. With Ramadi, you've got 3 good combat ships, and then these 2 with Ramadi and most wanted can be rolling 3 dice, which can be significant. So unless you have a specific distaste for most wanted, I would probably run it instead of Ion Storm. And then tactics with Ramadi, I say absolutely. With Ozzel, I don't know. I'd be tempted to go VIP with Ozzel, although that it makes your list a little bit more predictable. So maybe tactics is still the play. I don't know. But definitely with Ramadi, I think tactics is great. But let me go ahead and move along to the next list. Thank you very much for submitting. Next we move on to Louis Andre. Louis submitted this one on Discord. He said the following. Not sure about Mart Matin, otherwise it will be Corrin Horn, so we'll get to that here. I didn't try it yet, but think it can be good in general. It's mostly to have something different and a Kraken to not focus on a strong MC30. So I think we have a clear goal here. Kraken is, in my opinion, strongest with MC30s and CR90s, and so Louis did not want to run. He wanted to do a Kraken list that does not use MC30s. So let's see what he has. He's got Kraken on a CR90A with Ahsoka, linked turbo lasers, and Jaina's. He's got 2 Neb Bs, both with heavy fire zone, and then one of them is Yavaris with a flight commander. He's got GR75 with Tauren, munitions, Bright Hope, and then another one with Adar and boosted, and then the squad ball is Dutch, Ketsu, Lando, Mart, Gold Squadron, and 2 YTs. So he is rocking the 7 squad ball. Objectives: most wanted, asteroid tactics, infested fields. Seeing a pattern here with the objectives. So, this is a weird one. I like the use of things that are not commonly seen. Neb-B escorts, or Neb-Bs in general, not super popular right now. Heavy fire zone, I have never seen it on the table ever. And then Yavaris is not as good as it used to be by any stretch of the imagination, but I have not seen a ton of that either. So you've got some cool stuff here. This is the CR90 build that has been very popular recently, minus Ahsoka, which you can put her on there if you want. But Jaina's with LTTs on a CR90A, very solid. Something that I'm including in my new builds, something that I think a lot of people are starting to take note of ever since Patrick has done very well with it. So I like that a lot. This is pretty classic right here, as is these 2 transports here, and then the squad ball is also relatively classic. Just taking a look, I mean, obviously, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The 2 Neb-Bs escorts with heavy fire zone. So for those of you who are not familiar with heavy fire zone, because it's not very popular, it's turbo laser. While attacking a squadron before you gather dice, if the defender is not engaged with a friendly squadron, you may replace all the blue dice in your anti-squadron armament with red dice. If only the Neb-B had a slot for LTTs as well, then that would be great. But unfortunately, that is the turbo laser slot. So, heavy fire zone is not taken very commonly for a couple of reasons. Number one, it has a stipulation of, if you're trying to shoot stuff that's engaged, heavy fire zone is useless. The other thing is 2 red against squads is not amazing. The reason to take heavy fire zone is that it lets you reach out and touch your opponent's squads earlier than you'd normally be able to, which, let's say they're coming into you and you've got your squads held back. If you're able to throw 2 red at everything on the way in, you could get some plink damage, which could be pretty big. However, 2 red with no rerolls, in this case, because these are double blue ships, you're, again, very feast or famine. You don't have a really good way to reroll those. I see you've got munitions resupply here, so maybe you're spending Confire tokens on important squads that you want to deal some damage on. But I don't think that's a great use of Confire tokens. Personally, it's very situational. But 2 reds with no rerolls, you only got 3 applicable sides, really, 4 if it's against an ace that you need to lock a token for. So there's going to be a lot of rolls with these Nebs where you roll 0 damage, and your 4-point upgrade does nothing for you. You are right at 400. So you couldn't just put LTTs on both of those and change nothing else. You'd be over. So you'd have to find some points for it. I don't know where you find said points is the problem. Maybe doing something with the squad ball here. Martin Matten with 8R is very cute. I see why he's in here. Dropping the 2 proximity mines is neat, or proximity mine and shooting. And then obviously 8R with Lando is fantastic. But maybe you'll find the Corrin Horn is better here. I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. I don't know why Martin Matten doesn't have Bomber. But c'est la vie. Anywho, yeah, you'd have to find points somewhere else to go to LTTs. And so I see why Heavy Fire Zone is in there for that reason. You're trying to help your squads out a little bit on the way in. The other glaring problem that I'm seeing here is, and it's not even a huge problem, it's just going to really dictate the way you fly, is Kraken. Kraken does make the Neb-Bs a good bit more survivable, getting the obstruction on everything for a ship that has 1 shield in the giant side arcs with no redirect. That's good. That's going to help you survive for sure. However, staying at 3 with this kind of list is easier said than done. You're probably going to end up in a lot of games having to go speed 3 and not have that skinny front arc on target. So shooting out your sides for flak, totally fine. But the list has very, very little damage in it at all. The CR90 is at best going to be rolling like 3 to 4 damage on a great roll. 4 damage coming off of this would be fantastic. These things with 3 red, no rerolls, maybe 1 reroll with munitions, again, you're probably looking at 3 to 4 damage, and that's if you're not flakking, and that's if you're shooting out your front arc. If you're shooting out your side, forget it. That's probably 2 damage per roll, and on pretty good rolls, 3 max. And so your ships do almost no damage to opposing ships, and so it all comes down to the squads. And this is a good squad ball. This is a squad ball that can do a lot of damage to opposing ships. I'll bring them up down here. This is a great squad ball for attacking opposing ships, but up against opposing squads, it's not quite as good. And so then you're playing the squad game of trying to flak with the Nebulons and the LTTs on the CR90 and let your boys try to win like that. And then you have nothing to attack their ships with, nothing at all. And so you run up against something like an ISD with gunnery teams, that could get ugly. You go up against a list that's got some MC30s and a squad ball in it. They slide up right next to you. It's like, oh, cute, you're obstructed from Kraken. Well, here's H9's racks and you're dead. So it could be a problem where you are not getting enough damage from your ships against opposing ships. You're having to fly pretty aggressively with the Nebulons to keep Kraken up, and you're spending your resources trying to win the squad war with flak. So, this is a very hard list for me to estimate how it would do. I think against the right matchups, and if your heavy fire zone shots are rolling well, then yeah, I think it can be solid. However, I think it could also really, really struggle. So I'm interested, Louis, to hear when you do start playing this list, how it does. Because it's very interesting to me, this list. I think the objectives are just fine. I have nothing to complain about here. These are all exactly what I would take. So thanks for submitting, Louis. Like I said, let me know how you do with this. I'm interested to hear. Last list is another one submitted on Discord from Reem. I have played Reem now a couple times. Once, I think it was in the one-day Vassal tournament that I got second in, and then once recently in the Iron Chef tournament, which I will be doing a video on that. Once that whole tournament wraps up, I'll just do a recap. But Reem has submitted the following. He said, experimenting with Plo Koon again. Here's one of several different versions I am testing. So we've got Plo Koon on the Venator 2 with Wing Commander. This is an interesting inclusion. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Flight Controllers, Flag Bridge with Mercy Mission, Thermals, Ordnance Pods, Link Turbo Laser Towers, and Tranquility. This is a giant Christmas tree, which I like. Pelta Medical with Hondo, Medical Team, Bomber Command at Boosted, and then Consular Armed with Clone Captain Silver, Radiant 7, and CommsNet. And then the squad ball, we've got 10 squads. It is Anakin in the Delta 7, Axe, Ahsoka, and 7 Y-Wings, along with Precision Strike, Jamming Barrier, and Superior Positions. So a couple things to go over here. Number one, like I said, this Venator right here is an absolute Christmas tree, but I think it works okay. You have thermals, you have tranquility, you have ordnance pods and LTTs to deal with opposing squads. This is a tanky ship that is going to be hard to dislodge and is going to be very good at getting in there and brawling and supporting the squads in the squad war, which you're going to want to do with Plo Koon so you can get his ability. So I like that a lot. I think Mercy Mission is incredibly strong right now and is pretty much an auto-include in most Republic fleets, in my opinion. It can either help you, if you have a stalemate, it gets you the win from getting those 40 points. If you are losing a game, it can easily get you from like an 8-3 to a 7-4. It can also go the opposite direction. If you are winning a game, it can bump you up from a 7 to an 8. So I think Mercy Mission is fantastic. I don't think enough people are playing it right now. You have a great thing for it here with the Consular. That makes a ton of sense. Couple things to go over, though. Firstly, Wing Commander is an interesting inclusion. Before you reveal a command, you may change that command to a squadron command, which in and of itself is a pretty good ability. However, that thing is 6 points, and you know who else is 6 points in that slot? Ahsoka. Now, I know you have Ahsoka here to see you can, move your stuff around with her ability, and she's good by herself in the Delta 7. However, something that I have to credit Taserface for doing, and I think a couple other people are doing it as well. In fact, this list, our first submission was doing it. Ahsoka Officer is kind of stupid. And let me pull her up over here. Each of up to 3 non-unique squadrons you activate gain Snipe 1 for each die on their anti-squad armament, up to a maximum of Snipe 3. So Ahsoka Officer would give 3 of your Y-Wings Snipe 3, which can be very big in the squad war, especially since, giving the Y-Wings an extra oomph, because you only really have 3 other fighting squadrons, can be really big. And so I think, just by itself, Wing Commander for 6 points is very overpriced. Reem, I know you're a good enough player that you can probably get your command stack looking pretty good most games to where you don't need to use Wing Commander. And in my opinion, Ahsoka Officer just does so much to make these Y-Wings a bit deadlier for the exact same point cost. Subbing Ahsoka out, you could put in Lumi here. I have to remind myself exactly what she does. Yeah, so keep your Y-Wings alive longer. That sounds pretty good. You could also go to kickback here and then have a couple other points left to do something. Go down to a generic delta as well. You've got options there. And I know Ahsoka by herself, her squad is very good. But I'd be so tempted to get rid of Wing Commander and put Ahsoka there. Other than that, though, I think it's a really solid list. One thing I did think of is you're kind of forced to play the Venator one way. The Venator has to be aggressive and has to get in range of other ships so your squads can get the Plo Koon ability, because you don't really want the Pelta getting to where it's going to be using Plo Koon, and in most cases, sometimes relevant, but most cases you're going to want to fly that Pelta safe. And then the Consular is going to have Mercy Mission on it, so it doesn't really want to be the Plo Koon ship either, in most cases. So the Venator has to fly one way, so your opponent looking at the list is going to know pretty much exactly what you're going to do with the Venator, and if you don't fly the Venator aggressively and you don't get it into range for Plo Koon, then you've kind of wasted 26 points on your commander. Could have easily just gone Lumi or Yularen at that point. But in saying that, like I said, the Venator can definitely take some punishment. It's definitely a good brawling ship, how you have it built here, so it can do good work. Looking at the objectives, these are interesting. So superior positions makes sense. I'm still always tempted to take Infested Fields. Superior positions far and away has the higher scoring potential, and against squad lists, your opponent will never choose it. Infested Fields I like as some tech against opposing squad balls, particularly since you have so many Y-Wings. You kind of need a little bit of help. And then also as battlefield control, and basically, like I said earlier in the episode, a free 15 points at least. Precision Strike makes a lot of sense here. And then Jamming Barrier is the interesting one here, and I like it a lot in this list. Your squads are doing pretty much all of the work, and you are going to have, like, the Venator can shoot, but if it can be the Plo Koon ship, like that you're getting the extra thing off of, and not be taking very many dice back at it, it's thrilled. And so I love Jamming Barrier here. I think this is something that more players should consider. Putting Jamming Barrier in their lists when your squads are kind of your only weapon and you're going to have a ship that's going to be in danger, I think it's fantastic. But that is going to wrap up all I have to say about this and all the other lists. Thank you, Reem, very much for this submission. Folks who are watching, if you have lists that you want to submit, if we get enough of them, I will try to do this again in December. For those of you who have already submitted, if you want to provide some feedback or go over things that I forgot to mention or that you agreed or disagreed with, obviously let me know in the comments or on Discord. Like I said at the top, I'm not trying to tear these lists apart. I'm just looking at it from like a competitive perspective and offering feedback based on that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.